Real quick before we get into the video, I'd like to announce that I'm hosting another Ranch Week. Everyone seemed to love the one we did back in June, so much so that I figured I'd make this a biannual event. One on the first week of June leading up to my birthday, and then one in the first week of December. For those unfamiliar, I'll be streaming my Pokémon Ranch here on YouTube and over on Twitch 24/7 for the next week. And any shinies found in Generation 3 or 4 that are posted with the hashtag Ranch Week over on Twitter or Blue Sky will be added to the ranch for people to watch throughout the week. I will mention that I'm not including RNG or Cute Charm shinies for this event, mostly for my own sake, as if I allowed them I would be stuck adding shinies for the entire thing, since it would probably take less time to find one than it would take for me to add it. Also, if you can, make sure to put the Met location in your screenshot for the parade at the end. We found 143 shinies last time and some really cool ones at that, so I'm excited to see what people find this time. The Poké Radar was one of the more popular ways to shiny hunt in Generation 4 for the last one, so hopefully this deep dive helps you find some shinies this Ranch Week and those to come. Anyway, on to the video. You know, I don't think there's been a Pokemon mechanic with as much misinformation out there about it as the Poké Radar. Trust me, even if you're sitting there thinking, nah, I know how this thing works, I've read all the Bulbapedias, I guarantee there is at least one Poké Radar mechanic in this video that you didn't know about. This little device is given to you after you obtain the National Pokédex in Sandgem Town. The radar is most well known for unlocking the ability to find tons of species that only appear in Sinnoh with this item, as well as for being one of the ways you can increase your chances of encountering shiny Pokemon in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. Seeing as I've been slowly building a Generation 4 shiny living dex in my Pokemon Ranch, I have a vested interest in the exact inner workings of this item. And there is so much superstition surrounding how this item works that I'll hopefully be able to put to bed in this video. This video will also only cover the Generation 4 version of the Poké Radar. The versions found in X and Y and the remakes Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl have different mechanics that I have neither the experience nor knowledge to explain. When you use the Poké Radar in a patch of tall grass, up to 4 patches of grass will shake nearby. The radar will select one tile from each ring up to 4 tiles away from the player, including diagonals. Have you ever noticed how almost every route in Sinnoh has a roughly 9x9 patch of grass somewhere? This is why. If none of the 4 tiles the game selects contain any tall grass, you'll instead see the grassy patch remain silent. You may also notice 2 different kinds of grass. The first type shakes slowly, whereas the second type shakes quickly with bright blades of grass. The big difference between the two is that fast grass has a 22% chance of spawning a Pokemon that can only be found with the Poké Radar. The encounter table for the grass on every route can be broken down into 12 slots. 2 20%, 4 10%, 2 5%, 2 4%, and 2 1%. When you step into fast shaking grass, the game replaces the 3rd and 4th 10% slots as well as the 2 1% slots with radar exclusive Pokemon if applicable. This means if you're looking for a Pokemon that only appears with the Poké Radar, you can only find them in fast shaking grass. And conversely, if you're looking for a Pokemon that only appears in the 4 slots that get replaced like Beautifly or Dustox in Eterna Forest, you'll want to look for slow shaking grass. But finding the first Pokemon is only the beginning. Once you catch or defeat the Pokemon, you'll notice that another set of grass patches has begun to shake. Entering another shaking patch has a chance to give you an encounter with the same species of Pokemon. This is what's known as a Poké Radar chain, and is the main reason why you would want to use this feature. This allows you to not only find rare Pokemon back to back to back in order to catch multiple of them, but by encountering the same Pokemon with the radar multiple times in a row, you can increase your chances of seeing one of these patches with sparkles coming off of it. When you enter one of these patches, it will always be the Pokemon you are chaining, and it will always be shiny. This means that for approximately 300 of the 493 species in the Sinnoh Pokédex, you can use this item to find multiple shinies in about an afternoon, provided you know how to maximize your chances of continuing the chain. But figuring out how we do that is where the yawning chasm of complexity suddenly opens beneath us. To start, let's look at all the things that will break your chain that you'll absolutely want to avoid. For one, if you get into any battle that wasn't generated by the Poké Radar, your chain will break, but this can be easily avoided by having a repel active and defeating all the trainers in the area. Also, remember that the grassy patch remains silent message from earlier? If that happens while you're chaining a Pokemon, your chain will break. The easiest way to avoid this message is to only have the game generate patches while you have 8 patches of grass surrounding you. Since the game has to pick one of these 8 patches, you'll never get this message while you're surrounded by grass. The same situation can also happen when you step into shaking grass on the edge, but the game actually generates the next set of patches as soon as you step into a patch, meaning you won't get the message, but the effect is the same and your chain will be broken once you leave the encounter. This is also the only way your chain can break on a shiny patch. While I was in the process of writing this guide, I discovered a truly bizarre bug that affects the radar in certain spots related to having grass on the edge. If a grass tile is directly to the right of a water tile, the radar will treat it as though it doesn't contain grass when generating radar patches. This means it's possible to get the grassy patch remain silent to appear even while all 8 tiles surrounding the player are grass, which should be impossible, as if the only tiles selected are directly to the right of water, they won't count. Only grass directly to the right of water acts this way. Grass adjacent to water in any other direction behaves exactly as intended, so treat these grass tiles directly to the right of water as though they were empty. The chain will also break if you leave the area, use the bike, an egg hatches, a Pokemon in your party evolves, you end the battle by running from the Pokemon, or if every active patch leaves the screen at once. Now in general, what you want to look for is a patch that shakes 4 tiles away that has the same type of grass as the last one you stepped into, which will have the highest chance of continuing your chain. I'll explain why in more detail in a moment, but before I do, we should go over the idea of resetting the radar. To maximize your chances of continuing the chain, you'll not only want the patch you step into to meet the 2 criteria I just mentioned, but also have a ring of grass around it itself in order to avoid the radar failing to generate any grass for the next encounter. To get the best chance of having safe grass 4 tiles away, instead of activating the radar from the center of the grass patch, you'll want to activate it slightly off-center, away from the most complete corner of the patch. For example, if you stand in the center of the grass here on Route 201, most of the patches 4 tiles away from you have an increased risk to break your chain by not being surrounded by grass themselves. But if you stand slightly off-center, you have a lot more 4-away grass that is safe from that risk. If you don't see a safe patch of grass 4 tiles away that is the same kind of grass as the last you walked into, you can generate a new set of tiles by walking 50 steps and using the radar again, known as resetting. You can do this as many times as you want until you find a patch that is suitable to continue the chain, so by standing slightly off-center, you increase the chance that you find a suitable patch each reset. So now that we know all the things that are within our control, there are a few things that are completely up to the game that it never tells you that make Poké Radar chaining so arcane. To figure out exactly what's going on, we'll need to look at how the code sees Poké Radar chaining. I must give a huge shout out to Cyberworld Catgirl for helping me look through the Poké Radar code, as well as the Pret Discord for their work decompiling Pokemon Platinum. First, there are a few variables that the game uses to track your chain. Shake type keeps track of if you last went into slow grass or fast grass. Count and species keep track of what species you're chaining. Both of these can be tracked on the Trainer Counter Pokétch app that Professor Oak gives you in Pal Park, also unlocked when you obtain the National Dex. This app also keeps track of your 3 highest Poké Radar chains on that save file, and no, I can't explain why I have a 93 chain of Luxio on this copy of Platinum. That's just how I did things as a kid, and I didn't even get a shiny from that chain. The active variable tracks if you have a chain going, and finally patch is an array of the grass patches that currently have encounters. This array stores a few variables for each of the current patches. Shake type denotes which kind of grass that patch is, active denotes whether or not that patch has an encounter, shiny denotes if the patch is a shiny patch, and finally continue chain is the most important variable, which if true means the patch will guarantee you continue the current chain by forcing an encounter with the correct species. This is why the Poké Radar can still continue a chain of a swarm Pokemon even after the date is ticked over and the Pokemon is no longer in the encounter table. The chance for continue chain to be true is directly tied to how far away the patch spawned from the player. For patches that are 1 tile away, the chance is 28%. Patches that are 2 tiles away have a 48% chance, 3 tiles away is a 68% chance, and 4 tiles away is 88%. This is why you always want to go into grass that is 4 tiles away to maximize the chance that you continue the chain. For the tiles that spawn immediately after you exit a battle, the chances increase by 10% if you ended the battle by catching the Pokemon rather than KOing it. Continue chain is also the reason you only want to go into grass of your most recent shake type. When setting up the grass patches, the game checks if continue chain is true, and if it is, that patch will always be the correct shake type. This does not mean, however, that the correct shake type is guaranteed to be safe. If continue chain is false, there is a 50% chance that that patch will shake with the wrong shake type, letting you know that it's dangerous. But there's also a 50% chance that it uses the correct shake type, making it impossible to distinguish it from a safe patch. Continue chain isn't the be-all end-all for your radar chain though. If you enter into a patch of grass where continue chain is false, the game will roll a random encounter using the encounter table for that shake type. If you roll the correct encounter, your chain continues. There is a possibility to start a chain on one type of grass, enter the wrong type which will always have continue chain set to false, and then continue the chain with the new shake type, as you can see here with this Geodude chain. I start one encounter in slow shaking grass, and then while resetting the radar I accidentally enter fast shaking grass, which doesn't break my chain as I happen to encounter a Geodude in the fast shaking grass encounter table. When I leave that encounter, my shake type is now fast shaking grass, as that is the most recent type I entered. We can also see the same behavior when continue chain is false on grass of the correct shake type. Using a save state and entering this grass multiple times, we can see that some of the encounters break my Luxio chain by giving me another Pokémon, but when I encounter a Luxio, the chain remains intact. If this grass had continue chain set to true, the encounter would always be Luxio, and the chain would always continue. This means that your chance to break a chain when entering grass where continue chain is set to false is proportional to the encounter rate of the Pokémon you're chaining. If you're chaining Beldum in a swarm with Magnet Pull, your chances to continue your chain are a lot higher than something like 1% Curly on Route 204. If you want to maximize your chances of reaching the highest shiny odds, you should chain in the area that has the highest encounter rate for your target. This also explains why there's no 100% encounter rate grass patches in all of Sinnoh. If there were, you would never break your chain upon walking into grass, only by doing one of the things that break your chain externally from earlier. By extension, this means if your chain species is exclusive to fast shaking grass, slow grass will always break your chain. And the same is true for slow shaking grass chains of species whose encounter slots are covered up by Pokéradar exclusives and fast shaking grass. In general though, it's wise to avoid grass of the opposite shake type. Finally, we get to the end goal, shiny patches. Firstly, you cannot get shiny patches on a chain of 0, as they're hard-coded not to appear. You can still get a shiny in the first patch by the normal 1 in 8,192 odds that every wild Pokemon in these games has, but not specifically a shiny patch. When calculating if any patches should be shiny, the game first checks each patch for whether continue chain is set to true. If the patch has continue chain set to false, the game will force it not to be a shiny patch. This explains why shiny patches will never break your chain if they're not on the edge of the grass. The chance that the shiny patch check succeeds increases as your chain nears 40 following this equation. This caps at a 1 in 200 chance for any given patch where continue chain is set to true to be shiny, which would also mean that patches further from you have a better chance to be shiny as they're more likely to make it past that first hurdle. To see if this was accurate, I counted up the last 106 shiny patches I had seen with the radar, which barring early shiny patches were all found from spots where all 4 tiles could spawn at once. After graphing them out, we can see a clear increase in the number of shinies at 3 and 4 tiles away, and with more data we would likely see the 4 tile shinies pull ahead a bit further. This means that the chance that any given patch is shiny 1 tile away from the player is 28% times your Pokéradar chain shiny chance, 48% times your chain's shiny chance for grass 2 tiles away, 68% times your chance for 3, and 88% times your chance for 4. Using the approximate shiny rates for each chain length from 1 to 40, here is a spreadsheet of the approximate chance to see a shiny patch at each distance for each length, as well as the chance that you see a shiny patch at all assuming all 4 patches spawn at once. This also means that you're slightly more likely to see a shiny patch directly after a battle where you caught the Pokemon because of the 10% boost for continue chain to be true at each distance. I don't think it's worth potentially jeopardizing your chain by catching encounters past 40, as once you max out your shiny chance, you can reset the radar as many times as you like until your repels run out or you find the shiny patch. I do recommend returning to the exact center for these resets, or at least positioning yourself where there is as much of the 9x9 grid possible around you in order to maximize the number of patches you see per reset. It is also possible, although extremely unlikely, for multiple patches to be shiny at once. Unfortunately, this means that you won't be able to keep both. Getting 2 shiny patches at once is extremely unlikely. I've only ever seen a single recording of somebody finding 3 shiny patches at once, and I've never seen any recorded evidence of 4 shiny patches at the same time. As a parting gift for sitting through all that, here are a few little tips and tricks I've learned for using the Pokéradar. I highly recommend finding your reset point to begin before using a repel. That way you can have your radar charged and use a repel on your reset point to quickly soft reset if your chain breaks or you don't find the Pokemon you're looking for on the first encounter, skipping having to recharge the radar and waste repels or Pokeballs. If you're specifically hunting a Pokemon that only spawns with the Pokéradar, you can reset if you don't see any fast shaking grass in your initial 4 patches, since you'll never find your target in slow shaking grass. Be careful when moving directly upwards. Your character's sprite covers almost all of the patch directly above you and could cause you to miss an active patch. You can be sure it's safe to move upwards if you see a different patch in the 1-away ring shake. It's also very unlikely, but you can have shiny patches spawn directly above you, making them extremely hard to see. If you see the icon of the Pokemon you're chaining on your Pokétch disappear when you enter an encounter, that means your encounter broke your chain. This can be especially helpful if you go into Edgegrass, as the patch could still contain the correct species, but once you leave the encounter, the chain will be broken due to failing to spawn any valid patches. The best patch of grass to radar is on Route 222, west of Sunyshore City. This is, as far as I'm aware, the only patch that has the full 11x11 coverage of grass, meaning if you use the radar in the center, you're guaranteed to have a patch 4 tiles away that's surrounded by grass itself. When resetting the radar, be wary if you're running back and forth on a row that has active tiles. it's definitely possible to zone out or hold the D-pad slightly too long and end up going into bad grass. I recommend moving a row up or down to get onto a row that doesn't have any active tiles. When resetting the radar, I like to count out the remaining steps in increments of 3, 4, or 5 tiles away. If you move up or down a row, you'll need 49 steps to get back to your reset point, so you can go out and back 4 tiles 6 times or out and back 3 tiles 8 times to reach 48 steps, and then the 49th step puts you back on your reset tile. If your row doesn't have any active grass, you can go out and back 5 tiles 5 times for exactly 50 steps. If you keep your resets at 50 steps exactly consistently, you'll be able to time it so that your rappel wears off exactly when the radar is recharged, which is satisfying but not really super useful. Finally, you can save a little time while resetting your first encounter by putting your Pokétch on the app just before the Trainer Counter app. If you time pressing the next app button as you step into the first encounter, the Pokétch screen will load the Trainer Counter with the chain already started, allowing you to see what species it is before the encounter begins. The timing is a little tricky. Too early and the chain won't have started when the app loads. Too late and you won't load into the app before the screen fades to black. But this can save a lot of time with low percentage hunts once you get the timing down, as you can skip the animation leading up to what you've encountered. And with that, there's everything we found that there is to know about a single key item in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. One of the most needlessly complicated under the hood mechanics, but I've got to say it's really rewarding to get good at the Poké Radar and find some shinies. In the end, you don't need to know all this to be good at the Poké Radar. Ultimately, all you need to remember is to stock up on repels and good Pokeballs, only go into 4-away grass that has 8 tiles of grass surrounding it, and try to stick to the same type of grass that you used to start the chain. If you want to find an easy first target to try and get the hang of the Poké Radar, Route 202 with a Pokemon with a static ability in the front of your party gives you a 65% encounter rate for Shinx in slow shaking grass, making it a lot less likely that the chain will break due to bad luck. But hey, it wouldn't be a shiny hunt without a little chance. And remember, I'll be streaming all week from midnight on December 2nd to 11:59 PM December 8th, so come hang out, watch the ranch, and maybe hunt some radar shinies of your own to post with the hashtag RanchWeek. And even if I don't see you there, thanks for watching.